The following is a paid commercial program paid for by McClure Capital Wealth Management Companies and does not reflect the opinions or advice of KRLD or CBS Radio.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing, or CSI Show, with Victor McClure and Guy Allard from McClure Capital Wealth Management Companies. For the next hour, Victor and Guy will use their combined 60-plus years of experience to answer your financial questions with their own brand of plain-spoken language and hard-hitting style.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing Show. I'm Victor McClure. I'm your host. My co-host, Guy Allard. How you doing?
Pretty good. Happy Memorial Day. Want to take a minute to thank all of our veterans and
you're welcome.
That would include you, Victor. First responders, all the people on the line there that do so much for us, and as of late, go figure, are not appreciated. It seems like.
Oh yeah, we should have got out of the military when I did in the '80s.
But you weren't appreciated either, right?
No.
You're like the tail end of that whole Vietnam hate the military deal.
That's right. The hippies were still running around.
That's right. Apparently now they're on the West Coast and in Colorado.
Oh, yeah, they wouldn't let us in certain bars.
Right.
The beach in the Virginia Beach said no dogs or sailors on the beach.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh, yeah. It was good stuff back then.
Yeah.
I joined at the right time.
Well, at least now, you know, the benefits and hopefully the hospital and all that stuff's going to be getting better. Hopefully you can benefit from some of the benefits.
Oh, the veterans loans that I've used over the years.
For homes, that's
great.
Right.
The one I didn't use for college for my oldest son,
right,
is now 31. I'm going to use for my next three, or one of them anyway. And if any of you veterans out there don't realize it, the Hazelwood Act, if you were in Texas when you went into the military and then came back out, you can have 4 years of tuition and fees for your Texas public school. And I had no idea. An actual client showed it to me about 8 years ago. And I was like, my oldest son was in college for about 8 or 9 years.
Is it 4 years one time, or can you use it a couple of times?
I think you got so many credits. So it's about 4 years worth of credits.
Got it.
And so you can use it for children, stepchildren, any dependent. They don't have to be a blood relative. It can be a stepchild or anything else. And so, and you can choose the child. I think you could probably use half for one and half for another if you wanted to.
And I'm laughing because now your job is to convince one of your children the advantages of a public college.
I convinced my first one because I did the,
right.
Remember, I'm all about math. And so mathematically, that Texas Tomorrow Fund, when it came out, was the greatest deal in the world. We locked in rates from 10 years, 15 years earlier. And if you know anything about college tuition, how much it's gone up, that was the best deal in history. And so my son said, okay, I want to go to University of Hawaii or 5 or 6 other Parsons, where he ended up graduating, getting his master's up in New York. I said, okay, no, and no. I said, how about Texas A&M? He goes, that's because it's that military part you want me to do, right? I'm like, no. He goes, it's conservatives down there. That's what you want, right? I go, no. No, he went to University of Houston, actually.
Yes, he did.
Got his undergrad there, and then he went on to Parsons up in New York.
Did he pay for the masters himself?
He did.
Yeah, I thought
he did. I think I was done after about 6 years.
And it's funny, 4-year degrees now take 5 and sometimes 6 years.
Well, I have the same deal with all my kids. If you're going to be an engineer or doctor, something like that, I'll definitely go over the 4 years. But if you're getting some weird degree that doesn't mean anything, like undergrad in psychology, I'm not going 6 years on that.
We have a friend at Dillon Gage that graduated from Harvard.
That's right.
I think it was an arts degree or something, liberal arts or...
Oh, it's something with Greek mythology or something.
That's right.
He's a great guy. I'll tell you what, if you ever need anything copyrighted,
oh yeah,
he's the best one I've ever seen. He'll recite these rules that we learned in college or whatever.
Right.
Like, whoa, I forgot a long time ago.
You still know the periodic tables?
A lot of it, yeah.
Do you?
It's so funny. And when I was in high school, I took honors classes and stuff like that, and they took chemistry, right? First thing you do is pull down the periodic table of elements. And I said, I'm out of this class because I had enough credits. I didn't have to go to school the last half a day. And then I got in the military. They pulled down that thing, but you can't quit.
No, you got to work through it.
So that's when I got my deal into nuclear chemistry. Well, we're recording here at the Star in Frisco. We've moved into our new offices. Our phones finally work.
It's our first full week here.
That's right. If you have any financial questions, you want to come up and see us at the Star. We're going to give tours to all of our clients, things like that. Our number's 972-960-8700. But remember, our hotline hasn't changed. That's 972-715-2424. Again, 972-715-2424. Or you can always go to our website at ilovemyretirement.com. We have 4 or 5 websites. They all go to the same place. It's just a lot easier to remember ilovemyretirement.com than McClureCapital.com or blah, blah, blah. So, well, the world has been topsy-turvy lately.
That's right. Our president's been overseas.
Yes. So it's weird. There's a lot of uneasiness, more uneasiness than I've ever seen. If you polled people a year ago, they said Obamacare was the worst thing in the world. 70% wanted to repeal it. The recent study by Fox is 70% want to keep it.
And last week, Blue Cross pulled out of, which Blue Cross, by the way, is the last resort of these health care. It's not the first, it's the last vestige to hang in there. Pulled out of Missouri and Kansas, or at least out of a whole lot of counties, so almost completely out. So there's several states now that have no alternatives. So the 70% that want that in place.
Well, think about that. It came out and it's doubled or tripled in price or whatever, and there's only so many selections in a lot of counties or none, right? But that's how hard it is to get rid of an entitlement once it's in there. It's only been there a couple of years. It's turned out to be not great at all, but nobody wants to get rid of it. The reason I'm bringing that up is people call me all the time about Social Security. And if Social Security, they go, it's not going to be there. I go, trust me, it'll be there.
Some form.
Yeah,
right?
What form will it be? If they means test it, who knows? But it will definitely be there. There's no way for them to take out an entitlement that's been there for 50 years. And most people don't save much beyond that. If they had a pension, that helps. But if they didn't have a pension, you'd make a lot of people starve to death.
Well, and we're talking politics a little bit. They're talking about the budget. And really, they're increasing some of these entitlements a small percent, but not as much as was originally planned. So that in itself is being called a cut. Well, it's not a cut. It's growing. It's just not growing as much as before. It's much like in the healthcare deal. They say 20 million people aren't going to be insured. Well, guess what? The majority of those people were forced into a high payment. They were younger. They had to pay for coverage they didn't need. And now, since they're not forced in it, guess what? They're not getting it. It's not like they're getting pushed out, or you can't have an existing condition because they're doing block grants. But anyway, a lot of the news that we're getting is not accurate.
I don't want to hear. I have to turn off the thing. I'm a big listener to Fox, CNN. I listen to all of them because I want to hear all the different viewpoints. But I can't hardly hear it anymore because I can't listen anymore because it's so much of blah, blah. I want some regular news for once. I don't want to hear about Trump 24/7.
I was telling a client the other day, I used to watch Jim Cramer and all of that, and you'd find out what the Fed was thinking. Different Fed presidents would come in and they'd tell you their opinion on the economy and where it's going, and different economists, and Google's doing this and Apple's doing that. And it was informative, and you'd leave it on. You can't get any of that on those stations anymore. It's politics. Turn it off.
It's every single business channel. It's all politics.
I know it. We can do that for 4 years?
I can't take it. So
no.
I can only stand politics for a little while, once every 4 years, 2 to 4 years. I can't take it more than that because it's funny how the politicians, what do they got, an approval rating of like 10%, something like that, Congress?
Oh, yeah, it's worse than that now.
Well, remember our philosophy here at McClure Capital. It has been and always will be. We try to get you to a financial idea of a perfect retirement. I can't tell you what your perfect retirement will be. If it's fishing all day, playing golf all day, or doing nothing all day. But I can tell you financially, my idea of a perfect retirement, more money comes in every single month than goes out. In other words, if you got $8,000 a month in bills, $10,000 a month comes into your bank account. No matter what, it is guaranteed until you die. And you have to have other things to cover future inflation and things like that.
And maybe we can get into it in the next segment. I know we're kind of running towards the end of this one, but really like to spend some time and go through that with you, because a lot of folks we meet with will have $500,000, $1 million, even a couple of $1 million, and think that they're making enough in the market. they're making an average of 6%, so they can draw 6%, and 6% of the million is $60,000 a year, and they only need 50, and they're fine. They don't need anything. And there's a whole lot of things. And again, it's just the numbers. There's a whole lot of reasons why that won't work for you. And after the break, maybe we can explain that a little.
Yeah, the market, if you take all the returns of the last 17 years from 2000 to now, add them all together and divide by 17, you'll come out with 6.16 average return. The problem is average return doesn't work mathematically, because when the market makes 28% after it drops 50, you're only getting 28% on 50% of the proceeds. So when you average something, you're assuming it's the same value every single year. With the market, it's not the same value every year. We'll talk about that more after the break. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD. Don't hesitate to call us if you have any financial questions. 972-715-2424. We'll be right back after the break.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing Show, where your investment strategy is always based on facts instead of some sales pitch. Here's Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, if you have any financial questions, don't hesitate to call our hotline at 972-715-2424. Again, 972-715-2424. If you'd like to take advantage of our no-cost, no-obligation retirement stress test, it's a retirement plan stress test. What it accounts for is shows you what inflation does to your expenses and your portfolio over the years. It shows you what Social Security, also how to maximize your Social Security, and at the same time show the effects of cost of living adjustments on that Social Security and how that affects you over the years.
And I think also, if I can add, more importantly, as we were talking before we went to the break, we were talking about the difference of a 6% average return, which in reality was a compounded rate of 4%. And a lot of people we see think, well, I'm averaging 6%, so I can take 6% out. I'll never touch my principal, and I'll be fine. Well, what the software will show you is why that doesn't work, because we can take it and we test your portfolio in stocks, we test some of it in income, and you can see the difference. And if you remember, we talked about it a while ago, if you have an average rate of return of 6%, which we've had since the beginning of this century, 2000 through 2016, and you withdrew 6%, right, $60,000 per year on your million, at the end of last year, you would be negative about $49,000 or $50,000. Now, so you think, well, the compounded rate, right? It was a compounded rate of 4%, so I certainly could take 4, which is $40,000 on a million, not a lot, right? But I'll still have my $1 million. And because that account fluctuates, the same numbers, at the end of 2016, your million would be down to $649,000. What that demonstrates, and what the software that Victor talks about, and the reason why we'd like for you to come in, we can show you these things. It's eye-opening. If you had that $1 million in a CD, and you were getting 4%, which you can't get, but you could get $40,000 a year because you're just taking the interest. Why? Because the million is static. It's not up and it's not down.
That's right. And people don't realize that 649, taking out 4% the last 17 years.
4%.
Right. Is after we haven't had a down year in 8 years. So there's going to be a down year. So if it was another one of those 40 or 50% jobs like we've had twice in the last 17 years, you could be down to 200,000 or 300,000. And that's only your 18th year of retirement. In the old days, 16, 18 years of retirement was a big deal. But we're living a lot longer.
That's right.
They designed Social Security because that was the age people died. It was 65. That was the average living age of a person. So okay, we ain't going to pay this very long.
The older I get, further out seems younger.
Oh, no. And just to let you know, you've heard us talk about this show. We've been on the air for 20 years here in Dallas. You're not supposed to take out more than 4% of your assets a year if you want them to last. They've revised those numbers at the end of 2013 to 2.8%. Well, Money Magazine came out with an article here in April, the April issue, and it was talking about retire at 50, retire at 45. You can retire early. And it's talking about how much money you'd need.
The earlier you retire, you more. But before we get to that, if you want us to do that financial analyzer for you, we're happy to do it. There's no obligation. call us at 972-715-2424. 972-715-2424, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, what it shows is if you need, say, 100,000 a year to live, right? You need 3.8 million if you're 45. If you're 55, you need 3.3 million. And if you're 65, you need 2.6 million.
Makes a difference.
And if you take that number out, that 4% rule you heard so many years, take out, you got $1 million, you can only take out 40 a year. That's for a 65-year-old. And that's where you take the 2.6 million times 4%, and it comes out about 100 grand. It's like 101 or something.
Right.
So that's where they're getting that number. The only problem is the Money Magazine is using antiquated information. If they update it, it'd be 2.8% on a 65-year-old. So my point with all that is, instead of 3.8 to 2.6 million between 45 and 65, it's another 500,000 probably.
Or a smaller percentage.
That's right.
To withdraw.
And so those are the things, and a lot of people always say, well, you're just saying that you're being too conservative. No, these are Harvard studies. These are every kind of study you can think of. You cannot take out more than 3 or 4% of your assets per year if you want it to last. So the Money Magazine article continues, and it shows what are your odds of survival by taking out a certain amount. Now, a lot of people tell me, you don't understand, Vic. I only do AT&T stock, and it makes 6-7% dividends.
Yeah.
I said, I don't care what you do. I don't care how your investing prowess. You cannot go against the numbers for long. It may work for 5 years, 10, 20 years. Eventually, it will always get you. You can't be working against the numbers. I'll give you an example. If you take out 5% of your assets, regardless of what you're making, right, and you retire at 45, you have a 24% success rate. 24%. 76% of the time you will fail, and you'll be eating cat food when you're 80. Now, if you're 55, you've got about a 30% chance of success. 65, you got about a 50-50 shot.
Still not good.
No, and that's taking out only 5%.
We've talked about it all the time. There's a guaranteed retirement and there's a non-guaranteed. The choice is up to you.
And the reason why annuities are so popular the last decade, probably even 15, 20 years, is not because annuity salesmen make more commission. Fee-based advisors make more over time than annuity salesmen.
A lot more money.
Period. It is because people have saved $1 million and they need more than $20,000 to $40,000 in income per year. And the only thing that will pay that and guarantee it the rest of your life is an annuity. You just got to make sure you buy the right ones. Don't hesitate to call us at 972-715-2424. Or you can call our office number at 972-960-8700. Don't forget to go to our website at ilovemyretirement.com. We got a break coming up, folks. Stay with us. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD.
Welcome back to the Common Sense Investing Show, hosted by two of the most experienced advisors in the DFW Metroplex, Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, if you have any financial questions or you'd like to take advantage of any of our no cost, no obligation services like our retirement analyzer, retirement stress test, Social Security optimizer, don't hesitate to call our hotline at 972-715-2424. If you'd like an information kit sent to you about any of the products or services you've heard on this show for the last 20 years, our number again, 972-715-2424, or our office number is 972-960-8700.
And I would mention that anyone that calls off of our show, that calls at the hot number, calls at the office, and mention that you heard that offer, no obligation for the financial analyzer, Victor or myself will personally handle that for you.
That's right. The reason I'm going over these, this is the April issue of Money Magazine, is talking about what are the odds your money will last if you retired early, like 45, 55, and 65. Remember the 4% rule, which was revamped in the end of 2013 to 2.8%, means you have $1 million and you could take out $40,000 a year, and it gave you a 90% chance of not running out. Now it's down to 2.8 to give you that same 90%. That is for a 65-year-old. If you retire early, it's lower. Here, let's take that same 4% number. And you're going to, if you're 45 at retirement, you've got about a 42% chance of success. 42.
Retiring early is the equivalent of starting to save later in life. It has the same effect.
That's right. And if you're 55, you got about a 50-50 shot. If you're 65, you got about a 78% shot. Okay? Now, when does it get back up there to the 90% range for all 8? Once you take out 2% a year.
That's terrible.
It's a nightmare. Remember in the old days, I'm going to retire. If I save $1 million, remember $1 million, you're going to be rich, right?
That's right.
I'll put it in a 10% CD. I'll get my $100,000 a year. Because I remember when I was a kid,
you only
$100,000
needed 50 then, right?
That's right. It was a great deal.
That's right.
Well, this is the world we live in, and it's probably the world we're going to live in for the foreseeable future. The government won't let interest rates get high like they did in 1979, 1980, 81. It won't happen again. It caused us to go into such a recession and such a slow growth period. It took so long to recover from those Jimmy Carter days. The government and the Fed is much more active on their policy now, and they will not let that happen.
Well,
so you're not going to see a 10% CD again.
Europe's got negative rates. I mean, it's crazy.
But that's what we're talking about. The reason why we're talking about this kind of stuff, 2% is all you can take out. So every $1 million you get $20,000 income. That's why we're talking about for some of your money to get your bills up to a certain amount, to get your income in retirement up to a certain amount, the use of an annuity, if you stay with the low-cost type, you can get 6 to 12% of your money out a year. Don't get me wrong. It won't change the fact you're going to run out of a certain piece, but the income keeps going even if you do run out. So it doesn't change your odds. In other words, if you're 65, you still got a 70% chance of not running out if you take out, 3% or so. It'll give you 6%. You're still going to have a chance to run out. But if it does, the income does not.
Yeah, and we've talked about it 100 times, and I really want it to be clear. When you do that, when your income is taken care of and you don't need to draw on your stock accounts when it's up or when it's down, it will enhance those returns. Why? Just like we talked about earlier. The market's average 6%, but if you take 6% off of $1 million, 16 years later, you're negative 50,000. Well, if you had $1 million and you've negative 50 after 16 years, you didn't average 6%, did you? It's because it makes the losses greater, it makes the ups lower. It completely changes your rate of return when you have to withdraw from a fluctuating stock market account to meet your bills.
It's all in the mathematics of thinking about it. If you lose half your money, 50%, it takes 100% gain to break even. That's the big deal. That's one you can't overcome if you're taking money out and on top of possibly losing in the market itself. And that's why I tell you, the stock market's a great place. We've been managing stock market money for a long time. I've got a great managed program at Fidelity. But that's after your bills are paid. Anybody that tells you to pay your bills in retirement with a stock market through dividends or whatever, or growth, is giving you an opinion, and they, honestly, to me, they don't care if you run out, because all they care about that fee they get every year, because if you really thought about it, if I could take a third or fourth of the money to produce the same income,
right?
Why wouldn't you do that? In other words, $1 million's going to give you $20,000. How about $1 million giving you $80,000 a year? Well, do that, and if you have $2 million, take the other $1 million. You never have to touch it. If it just grows 2 or 3% a year, you're going to leave your kids or whatever $3 or $4 million.
And if you don't touch it, you will get that 4% compounded rate that it's averaged over the last 16 years.
Don't get me wrong. I don't ever want to run out of money in retirement. But if I did, I wouldn't leave an inheritance, but my income will still be. Remember, I have 4 kids. Every one of my kids, I told them the same thing. You're welcome to every dime I don't spend. Just hope I'm not having to live with you when I'm 80.
That's right.
And so that's all that I care about. Call us at 972-715-2424, and we can get a no-cost, no-obligation consultation or send you an information kit. Again, 972-960. I'm going to give you my office number, too. 972-960-8700. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD.
Welcome to the Common Sense Investing Show, the home of plain-spoken, no-nonsense answers to your financial questions.
Welcome back to the Common Sense Investing Show. Remember, if you have any questions, if you'd like to talk to us, we've been doing this for 30 years each. I hate saying that because that really dates ourselves.
Dick Cavett said it. He didn't care who you dated.
I'm sitting there going, oh, my gosh. Because remember, when you were younger, anybody that even lived 30 years when you're younger thought was old, much less did the same job. So, and they didn't do it right. We didn't. Neither one of us started out of high school. That's even worse. We started a lot later in life, right? All right. Let's talk about a person, a case study that came in here a few weeks ago. And we're doing an income plan just like we talk about all the time on the radio. In their case, it took about 40% of their assets to create an income stream they wanted. It was about, I think, 50-something grand a year.
Guarantee their retirement.
45 grand a year, I believe it was. 45,000 a year was what they wanted. But in the meantime, another advisor talked to him and said, you're 15 years to retirement. You really don't need an annuity. You want to do that later. You're too young for an annuity. You need more growth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in the stock market until then, and that's going to give you a whole lot more growth. Then you can do an annuity to cap it off later. And that sounds all good, right?
Right.
Sounds pretty decent. Oh, I don't want more growth because I'm still younger. The truth is, mathematically, if your objective is income, it is impossible, virtually impossible, to equal the income of an annuity. Here's why. This plan we had was, I think it was about $400,000, was going to produce $48,000 a year.
Right.
To start, right? And it grew to about $80,000 a year by the time the client was 80. So 48 to 80. And so what we did was I took it just to show the client the mathematics of what the other person is proposing. Staying in low-cost indexes, something like that. I said, okay, we got this $400,000. Let's say it makes 10% a year. Now, knowing the stock market's made 4 for the last 17 years, and 90% of people don't equal the stock market. So 90% of people made less than 4. You made 10 after all fees. 10 per year for 14 years in a row. And that came out a pretty good number of that 400,000.
Oh, yeah.
But if you go and take that 3 or 4% rule again, they'd get 42,000 in income. And so I said, what you're looking at is the market has to go up 14 years in a row. It's already gone up 8. So the market has to make 22 up years in a row to give you a bottom line of 42,000 in income. I'll give you 48, increasing to 80 without the market making anything. That is the difference in how powerful it is, an income generator. But let me take that back. If your objective is growth, there's nothing wrong with low-cost index funds. I love them. I own them.
Well, and I think that's where the problem, especially with people that just the finances, it's not something they do day in and day out. Like we talked about earlier, the compounded rate of return the last 16 years is 4%, but no, you can't take out 4% a year because you'll run out of money. It doesn't make sense, does it? It's the same thing with annuity, and I think a lot of times where people get lost is these fixed index annuities are one of the very best things right now, in my opinion, for generating income, which is what Victor's stating. And you can see from his example, you could get much more income for the same amount of money. But they don't grow as fast as the stock market can. One, they tell you they can grow and it should grow. So whether it does or not, it's not guaranteed. But you certainly have more potential for growth with the stock market than you do with a fixed annuity. So logically, right, the logical mind thinks, well, if I've got more potential for growth, then I'll get more income, right? But those two don't connect. The fixed annuity gets you the most income. Stock market can get you the best growth.
And the reason is they're giving you, instead of having to withdraw 3 or 4% like you would if you were in the stock market, they're going to give you 5, 6, 7%. And the money grows. That combination makes it virtually impossible. I go, so think about it. Do you really think the stock market's going to go up 22 years in a row? It's only gone up 9, never.
Oh, but it could.
That's right. Of course it could, right?
Yeah, right.
I said, so if your objective is income, it is impossible virtually to beat the income something like this will do. But if your objective is growth, obviously low-cost indexes are a great idea, or a managed account if you want a little more active management.
Bottom line is take a part of your money that you want to use for growth and put it in the thing that's going to get you the best growth or potential. If you need income, take that part of the money and put it in the best vehicle that's most effective and efficient to get you the most income.
You know, the guy and I were at a charity function here a few weeks ago, and a few people there listened to our show. And one of them said, "You're that annuity guy, aren't you?" I used to get really offended by that. But if you're talking about income, I am your annuity guy.
Right.
But if you're talking about growth and liquidity, I'm your stock guy. the people that do just one or the other aren't giving you unbiased advice. They're not giving you advice at all. They're selling you their managed program or a stock program, or they're selling you an annuity or a life insurance policy. There's a difference when you do both and get compensated on both and are licensed and qualified on all. A lot of people they might understand it a little bit, but they're not licensed or qualified to really do it, don't have the experience. We have experience on all of it. And so when you have something like that, it's hard enough to get unbiased advice from anything or anybody.
Boy, isn't that the truth.
It really is.
How about on politics?
But if you only do one thing, try to get unbiased advice from a Chevy dealer that only sells Chevys. Do you think I should buy a Toyota? Oh, my gosh, that's the worst thing in the world. Aren't you patriotic?
That's right.
What?
It's made in San Antonio now. You're right.
I was like, come on. But that's what you're trying to get, is trying to get to some unbiased advice. The Department of Labor, Acosta is the new Department of Labor chairman or chief or whatever. And they're not delaying. In June, it's going to go into effect. We are already fiduciaries in our stock market stuff. Anything else now will become a fiduciary. And there's good and a bad about it. Obviously, somebody working out in your best interest makes the most sense. But we'll talk about the unintended consequence when we return. Remember, don't hesitate to call us if you have any financial questions, like any information sent to you, or like a free, no-obligation consultation. 972-960-8700. Or go to ilovemyretirement.com. Stay with us, folks. You're listening to the Common Sense Investing Show on News Radio 1080 KRLD.
Welcome back to the Common Sense Investing Show, hosted by two of the most experienced advisors in the DFW Metroplex, Victor McClure and Guy Allard.
Welcome back to the show. Right before the break, we're talking about the Department of Labor fiduciary rule. Now, anybody that gives you advice on retirement plans will be a legal fiduciary. Now, Trump has talked about getting rid of this rule or any owner's rules. Acosta also believes it doesn't go with Trump's plan. But legally, they know anything Trump does at this point, or his White House or his cabinet picks, some California court is going to get it, right?
It's amazing how one judge in one state can make a ruling for the whole country. The DOL rule, kind of the fiduciary rule by the Department of Labor, kind of a lot. I compare that to the Dodd-Frank. I think Dodd-Frank had some good things. The banking got way out of hand. It needed to be reined in. But with the best intentions, like everyone should be a fiduciary, you should care about your client. Oh, that stuff's great. You should be, right? I mean, that's what we do. But the unintended consequences, Victor, you and I talk about it all the time. There's a lot of small companies out there because they have to have reserves, and they may only make, let's say they make 2% on the product that they place or the annuities or whatever. They have to have a 1% reserve. So 50% of all their profits can't go anywhere. So what does that do? The small companies cannot compete. They get wiped out. They're gone. All the large companies are saying, this is the greatest thing ever, and they're writing thousands of letters saying, yay, good job, you're doing it. So there's some unintended consequences that you'll see in the aftermath.
Well, the main unintended consequence of a fiduciary rule, like I said, we've been legal fiduciaries for a long time.
Absolutely.
But the unintended consequence is people with small accounts, because it opened up lawsuits. Used to you go to arbitration, things like this.
Right.
Now it's lawsuit central. And so what somebody will do is if you got an account under $500,000, under $1 million, you won't find an advisor touch you with a 10-foot pole.
That's right.
They did this in England several years ago, and all accounts under $500,000 are basically orphan accounts, because you can always legally challenge somebody later. Let's say they put you in the stock market. Stock market goes down. Well, obviously it was a bad investment, right?
Yeah.
Obviously it shouldn't have been in their best interest. It went down.
Yeah.
Same thing with an annuity. You put them in an annuity, made 5% a year for 10 years. Well, the stock made 6%.
Oh, it was a terrible investment,
That's right. You can always second guess and look back at anything and sue somebody. That was always against the law. But now it's Katie barred the door.
Yep.
So there's unintended consequences, and that's why nobody will touch small accounts, period, ever. But they might have changes because it goes fully into effect by January of next year, and they're hoping to change it by then. But right now it's going in.
Right.
And so it's like Obamacare. Obamacare has think about it. In theory, we're going to insure the 5% of people that aren't insured, right? That's good. But what it did is it screwed the other 95% with extra premiums and all this kind of stuff. So there's unintended consequences. You got to really think out legislation before you pass it. That was one they couldn't get through the SEC. They couldn't get through FINRA or the state securities regulators. So Obama wanted this done, so he went to the Department of Labor, which normally doesn't take anything to do with retirement accounts except for you got to, means testing on 401ks. Make sure you're not giving all your top employees too much versus your bottom, top-heavy testing. But now they went that way, and it's a difficult thing anytime you have a regulation to get rid of it later. But there are good things, because if you have over $1 million, all of your advice on your retirement account should be from a fiduciary basis, when right now it might be 10% of advisors are doing fiduciary type stuff.
Yeah, and even especially widows a lot of times get really hit hard on their retirement accounts by somebody swooping in to help them.
So the people they're trying to help with this rule was, hey, little guys are getting charged too many fees, or they're getting screwed over by unscrupulous people. I get all that, and that has to be addressed and taken care of.
Sure.
Anybody that's a crook needs to go to jail, period. But what they're doing is they just put them on an island by themselves, and the only ones that are going to call them aren't registered. And the unregistered, unlicensed investments, those are the real crooks. Those are the real sharks. And they don't have to abide by the fiduciary rule.
That's right.
And so you got to be very careful there. All right. I think we might have time for a couple questions. See if we can go ahead and get one.
All right, here we go. I've got one. I'm about to inherit a large sum of money, and I have no idea what to do with it. Boy, there's an open question. Do you have any suggestions on where I should start?
Well, first thing I would say is define what a large sum is. If it's the same as what I think a large sum is, the first thing you need to do is call 972-960-8700.
And ask for Guy Allard, not Victor. No.
You need to burn that into your brain right there. Our number, ilovemyretirement.com. No, truthfully, it really depends. You have to really think it out. You may have to hire an attorney. You definitely want a financial person.
Take your time.
Make sure the financial person is licensed in every area. We hope it's us, but if it's somebody else, make sure they just don't do one thing.
That's right.
And so because there's some estate issues you have to deal with. There's taxation issues you have to deal with. You got to get an accountant, all these kind of things. But my first advice always is prevent yourself from being taken advantage of by yourself. In other words,
good advice.
Get yourself some kind of income for life. I like the lump sum option instead of the income option because I don't know if the lottery's going to be there 20 years from now, right? If I get all the money up front, I know it's less.
That's
but
right.
I'd still convert part of that to, all right, I'm going to get $1 million a year till I die, or $100,000 a year, whatever it is. Do that first. So no matter what I screw up, I'll never have that income. I can retire to whatever, live on the beach.
And avoid the irreversible mistakes. What's an irreversible mistake, you ask? If you take too much risk and you lose half of your money, that's irreversible. It's not coming back.
Because, and I don't care who you are. If you inherit a lot of money, you'll spend more than you used to. Trust me. Remember, don't hesitate to call us, 972-960-8700. Or call our hotline, 972-715-2424. Or go to ilovemyretirement.com. I'm Victor McClure. For Guy Allard, we always appreciate your time.
The preceding show is paid for by McClure Capital and is for informational purposes only and not a solicitation or representation of any particular investment, product, or service. Any views and opinions do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult with your appropriate professionals before making any investment or savings decisions. Always consider your risk tolerance, time horizon, and objectives in making any financial decisions. There is never any guarantee of future success or performance.
The preceding was a paid commercial program paid for by McClure Capital Wealth Management Companies and does not reflect the opinions or advice of KRLD or CBS Radio.